Welcome into the Tiger Kickoff Show. Missouri, 3 losses on the board after falling to South Carolina 34-30 in what was a thriller in the fourth quarter. We've got our Missourian crew coming back from, Adam came from Denver, Davis and Amelia out from South Carolina to break down this matchup. We talked about it on Thursday. It seemed like this could be the backbreaker for the Missouri Tigers if they lost in Columbia, South Carolina, and gave up the Mayor's Cup for the first time in 5 years, and that's exactly what happened. So, Adam, I know you were out partying up at a wedding, but I'm sure you were paying attention to the Tigers game. First off, how was your weekend in Denver?
Yeah, it was actually really nice. I had a cousin that got married, so Carly, if you're watching, congratulations. Didn't get to watch the game live as the ceremony was going on right during the middle of the game, but I was able to piece together a little bit of it yesterday, and then I'll do a full watch through later tonight as well. But from what I've seen, just an ugly bit of execution from Missouri at the end of the game, ugly bit of execution at the end of the first half. Missouri's playoff hopes are dashed. It's as simple as that. They're not going to the playoff. And I think that's very disappointing for a lot of folks.
Yeah, Eli Drinkwitz, he said it was okay for Tiger fans and for his team to be disappointed, not devastated. That's something that we'll talk about a little bit later. I want to ask you, though, Davis, because the last time the Tiger Kickoff Show crew was in Charlotte Airport, they were stuck there. This time you flew back into Charlotte and you drove down to Columbia, South Carolina. Tell me about the trip. How was it? You have a good time?
I do, yeah. We did have a good time. Charlotte did a good job finally. We flew directly into Charlotte, so there was not much they could screw up. And credit to them, they did a fine job. It was a long travel. It was a lot of flying, a lot of driving, but we had a good time for sure.
Well, I'm glad you guys got there safe as well in your hometown of Dallas. Heard that a Southwest flight, y'all were flying Southwest, had a bullet hole in it the other day. So glad to hear that wasn't Southwest in Charlotte. Make sure that you guys were good. Your travels fare well for you, Amelia?
Yeah, no, didn't get that much sleep, I may say, but otherwise it was a great trip. Really loved the atmosphere at the stadium. Williams-Brice Stadium was really awesome. The press box was really nice. It was a really good trip.
And cool, obviously, in Mayor's Cup as well. It's something that the Tigers have owned here in Columbia for a very long time. Again, 2018, the last time that Columbia, South Carolina held the Mayor's Cup. Now they have it once again. Let's talk a little bit about this game. At the beginning of the year, we talked a lot about the slow start that the Missouri Tigers had. And I think the last couple games, you talk about Oklahoma, you're talking here against South Carolina, everyone has been so focused on the fourth quarter. But I want to ask you, Adam, about the slow start to the game. I know you said you've looked at chunks and pieces so far to start, but what have you seen from the first half of this football game?
Yeah, I mean, this first half from Missouri was very symbolic, I think, of their season as a whole. We talked about early in the season they're starting slowly, and in the game, Missouri started very slowly. Only 6 points in that first half, all of them coming off of field goals. Missouri has not scored a touchdown in the first half since UMass. That's got to change. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and UMass, the one road victory for the Tigers this year. They've really struggled on the road. It's been a rough journey, especially in conference play. Obviously, 0-3 in conference road games this year going into South Carolina. The Tigers have only scored 10 points on the road. It was a different story, but yet again, they could not come through against South Carolina. You think there's any reason to this, these road games? Has it been the matchups? Has it been the atmosphere as to why the Tigers can't come through?
Well, I think it's really tough to play on the road in the SEC, but Adam did a piece about this, and Drinkwitz, as a head coach of the Tigers since he's been here, has struggled on the road more than a lot of the other coaches in the SEC. So I don't know, I'm not sure what it is, but it's something that Missouri has, it's kind of plagued them for a long time.
Like Adam said, it was 2 field goals in the first half. You can't do that. You really need to be more productive to establish that game in the beginning. I do think that they really did make up for it in the second half. They definitely picked up on the speed. Brady Cook said that during the halftime, the team kind of rallied together and were able to get that momentum that they really needed to end up making it a close game. They had 2 close games in a row with Oklahoma and then this. So they did eventually break their 8-game streak of winning 1-score games. But they did fight really hard at the end.
They fought hard at the end, and you could see the emotion from Brady Cook. Cook was a player that we didn't know. Nobody really knew. Brady Cook said he didn't even know if he was going to start or not. Cook, after the game, told us that he only knew he was going to start 5 minutes before kickoff, and that's when he knew he was all clear to suit up. And he was clearly dealing with some injuries, but he surpassed the 200-yard mark. He had that passing touchdown on 4th and 5 to Luther Burden for over 30 yards, which was huge. What did you see out of Cook this week, Adam?
Yeah, Brady Cook was far from the biggest issue that Missouri had, I think, frankly. Obviously, you could tell that the hand was bothering him a little bit, and I think there were some folks that were making maybe a little bit of a bigger deal about his throwing motion pregame than needed to be made. He ended up looking fine as the game rolled on, and I think the Missouri offensive line did a phenomenal job of protecting him. They understood that they had to. Even without your main guy in Connor Tollison, I think Armand Membu stepped up and had, quite frankly, his best game as a Missouri Tiger. Cook didn't look like he was uncomfortable in the pocket too much. You didn't see him rushing a ton, but he made the throws that he needed to make. He was not the issue for Missouri this week.
And a lot of missed tackles might be one of the issues for the Missouri Tigers. Johnny Walker talked about that at the end of the game. Walker was a player who a year ago held the Mayor's Cup with Darius Robinson and said 5 years is not a rivalry. Well, they found out in Columbia, South Carolina, that rivalry maybe is a little bit revitalized. Those missed tackles, though, how large of an impact was that in the game?
Yeah, it completely changed the game, especially in the second half. There was a play in the fourth quarter where it was 3rd and 10, and Johnny Walker had Lenore Sellers probably 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and if he sacks him there, the game is over. That's when Missouri has the lead. If that happens, South Carolina punts the ball back, and Nate Noel ran really well. The offensive line, like Adam said, blocked extraordinarily well. So if they get the ball back up 1 in the fourth quarter, you have to think that that's probably enough. But Lenore Sellers somehow gets out of there and picks up the first. And then obviously the last drive of the game was just a disaster for the Missouri defense, which is interesting because it seems like the offense and the defense just can't play well at the same time. And that was a problem late. A ton of missed tackles. Especially on that last little shovel pass to Rocket Sanders, and he bounced off like 3 guys and walked in the end zone. So that was definitely one of the main issues in the game.
If you look on the win probability chart on ESPN.com, it kind of goes like that, and then it goes like that for the Tigers, and then it goes like that for South Carolina in terms of who was to win that game. What did you kind of see as maybe a factor of that, Amelia, being there in person? You probably felt the energy go out of Williams-Brice a little bit when the Tigers scored that long touchdown to Luther Burden. But then with under a minute to go, 54 seconds to run the clock, South Carolina drives the field. What did you see there and what allowed South Carolina to have that game-winning drive?
Well, whenever that drive happened, it felt like an earthquake almost. I mean, everyone was yelling, screaming. The atmosphere was the highest it had been all night. I can imagine that is really intimidating for the team, and especially at the end there. And it was really that energy the whole entire game. They really carried that throughout it. Missouri, in those 3 losses they have in those away games at Alabama, at Texas A&M, at South Carolina, those are some of the 3 hardest stadiums to play at in the SEC. So we can really attribute that to those losses, I think. But I mean, compared to those games against Alabama, against Texas A&M, Missouri played, in my opinion, a lot better and a lot harder and more consistent with more drive and motivation during this game compared to those other 2.
I think, too, this is one of the better games that Missouri has played up against a solid opponent this year. South Carolina, ranked on the road. They fought to the end. They didn't get blown out like we saw at Alabama. They didn't get blown out like we saw at A&M. And that South Carolina team is a team that beat Texas A&M a couple weeks ago in prime time. We really need to talk about here, though, is the fact that the Tigers have 3 losses now. You mentioned this off the top. We said it, the Tigers needed to win this game to keep any chances, any hopes. The probability was still low of the Tigers making a playoff push. even an SEC championship push. But now with 3 losses, it's all but dead, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, the math just doesn't add up, frankly. I mean, there's no way really for Missouri to make it into the SEC championship game. They're not going to be ranked in this week's college football playoff ranking. They're not going to make up enough ground to get back into those top 12 spots. I will say that if Missouri takes care of business in these last couple of weeks and they go out and they win their bowl game, that's still a double-digit win season. It's still a 10-win season. That's not an abject failure. I think a lot of fans are maybe panicking a little bit too hard. Maybe the expectations going into the year were a little bit too lofty. But yeah, the playoff is 100% out of the picture now.
And that seemed to be the focus after the game in the press conference of kind of this whole thing of redefining the expectations for the season. Obviously, coming into the year, we've said it 1,000 times, the Tigers thought they were going to be and thought they could be a playoff team. Now we know it's not the case. But again, that doesn't mean the season's over. The exact quote was, "We can be disappointed, we can't be devastated." And Brady Cook, Johnny Walker, several others, they all mentioned that there's still a ton of seniors on this team that have given a lot to Missouri, the state, the university. They still got a bowl game on the line, still an opportunity for a 10-win season. But certainly the expectations are a little different now. Is there a way to make the most out of this opportunity, Davis?
Yeah, getting to 10 wins is huge. I mean, if you told fans at the end of the year that Missouri went 10-3, a lot of them probably would have thought you make the playoffs and lose, but it's still a 10-3 season, and a lot of those fans probably would have been fine with that. And the way they've gotten there has been disappointing, obviously, but if you go 10-3, that's back-to-back 10-plus win seasons, which is not an easy thing to do in the SEC at all, and it's a complete 180 from where Drinkwitz and Missouri was 2 years ago, where they went 6-7 twice in a row. I think there's nothing to be ashamed of at a 10-3 season. It's not what fans probably wanted, but if you get there, it's a building block, and the momentum's not gone.
Do you have a target for any potential bowl games that the Tigers might be a fit for? I've heard Duke's Manual Bowl, just a couple other things thrown out there.
I saw the Gator Bowl today thrown out by 247 Sports. The Texas Bowls want to continue to see bowls like that. I mean, it's going to be a smaller bowl, but it's still a bowl game, and Drinkwitz and the Tigers prior to the Cotton Bowl really struggled in bowl games. So this is this year will be another chance to win a bowl game.
And going forward in these next 2 weeks, Amelia, you have Mississippi State coming up, and then you've got Arkansas the week following to kind of round up your schedule here. What do you want to see out of this Missouri team? Do you need to see fight? Do you need to see that this team hasn't given up? Because obviously there's still 2 games left to play on the schedule.
I want to see them play exactly how they did with that energy in the second half. I feel like, in my opinion, and I was honestly really happy with the Tigers' performance. I think that was the first time that I had felt like they were playing like the 2023 team. You saw that connection on the offense. You saw everything click. We have been talking for weeks on this show, really all season, about how we just have not seen that click. And this was the first time that I did. And I think the defense up until that last drive had an extremely great game. I was really happy with the Tigers' performance this weekend, and so I would really like to see that continue through those last 2 games and also the bowl game as well. You're not going to make the playoffs. That's something that I've kind of thought was not going to happen for a few weeks now, but you have a chance to really end the season on a strong note and set yourself up for a great season next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, really this was the final blow for the Tigers. Your Jenga stack is down to 1 block. That's what it was. You pulled the final block. Wasn't looking good, but it is really over for the Tigers now. We knew that coming into this game. The Tigers were not able to win. Like Amelia said, there were some positives that you could take away, like finally seeing Luther Burden get on page with Brady Cook, and Brady Cook look comfortable in the pocket. So let's move over to our grades here, because there are 2 kind of weights. On one side, the Tigers lost. On the other side, there are some positives. So starting with you, Adam, where did you rank the Tigers here in your grades?
Yeah, Jacob, I have this one as a B-. I think Missouri played well in this game. It's difficult to go on the road and play against a ranked opponent, but at the end of the day, they lost the game that they should have won, right? Anytime that you lead the game by more than a field goal or at least a field goal, I should say, with less than 2 minutes to play, that's a game that you should at least hang on, to send to overtime. It's a complete abject failure. by the defense over those last minute and 10 seconds. And I think just that bad taste left in the mouth of myself and a lot of Missouri faithful is enough for me to feel like this game was nothing better than a B-.
You're right, Davis.
Yeah, I was going to go even lower, but the fact that they made it close at the end and actually had the lead with a minute left makes me also go B-. I just think, the highlights at the end of the game, right? Nate Noel running for 150 yards, the Luther Burden touchdown on 4th down. These are things that are going to make fans feel better about this game. But at the end of the day, this was, for a majority of the game, I would say a really, really, just a poor, especially to end the halves. It's a problem that Missouri has had for years, the way they end halves. At the 2-minute warning in the first half, it was 7-6, and at halftime it was 21-6, which is just completely inexcusable. I think Missouri had like a 3-play drive that took 24 seconds off the clock when they needed to go on a 2-minute warning or 2-minute drive. That was a total failure, and if they hold up better there, they win the game. And then at the end of the game, complete failure by the defense. There is no excuse for letting a team go, 80 yards down the field in less than a minute. It's one thing to give up a field goal and go to overtime, but to give up a touchdown as easily as they did was a complete and total failure, and for me, that's why it's a B-.
So I have a very different grade, and I'd like to take a minute to walk you through this. This whole season, we have talked about how we have not seen Missouri Tigers play a full game. And I don't know that we necessarily really saw the best performance in the first half. I think it was definitely better than a lot of other performances we've seen on the road this year. But that second half really stood out to me. You saw not just the offense click, you saw the defense dominate, coming up from, half 21-6, coming up from that to make it a one-score game at the end. I was really impressed by that. The O-line, like you said, had Cook comfortable in the pocket for the most part. They helped block so that Nate Noel had a killer game. Theo Weiss also did as well. The defense did great overall too. We think about these environments and we think about how absolutely blown out the Tigers were at Texas A&M and at Alabama. To be in a similar environment and play this well, that really says a lot. And South Carolina defeated in a good fashion Texas A&M just a couple weeks ago. To have Missouri be blown out by Texas A&M and then hold South Carolina like this, that shows how much this program has grown in those few weeks. I was really impressed with this game. I thought that the Tigers fought harder than they had at all this season. It was the first time that I saw they really looked like that 2023 team, and it honestly was the first time that I thought the Tigers looked like a top 10 team this season. I know that there was a big mistake at the end. That does cost the team the game, obviously, but I think overall the performance was a lot stronger than that. I said that I would never give the Tigers above a B for a loss, but I'm going to amend that statement today because I was really impressed to see that connectivity happen. I gave them an A.
So it's funny what you mentioned about the Tigers looking like the 2023 Tigers, because walking to the studio, I had a very similar thought. And I said, I feel like people have a better taste in their mouth about this South Carolina game than they should, because it reminds them of the 2023 season. How many times in 2023, when you look back at Florida, when you look back at Kansas State, when you look back at all these games that the Tigers probably should not have won, but they had that lead in the fourth quarter, they went down, they scored to take it, and they held it, and they won the football game. This is not the 2023 Tigers. This is the 2024 Tigers. And while it might have felt like the 2023 Tigers for that entire fourth quarter, the Tigers were down 21-6, and they came all the way back, and they took the lead, but they lost the lead. This was a game going in that Missouri knew they had to win. Eli Drinkwitz knew he had to win it. His team knew they had to win it if they wanted any chance of fulfilling their goal for the season. They did not. They allowed a touchdown drive with under a minute to go, with, like Adam says, was unacceptable. You have to make tackles. Like Davis said, you have a 3rd and 10 opportunity, a quarterback in your hands. He escapes. You continue a drive. That's unacceptable. And for that reason, I give the Tigers a C+. Because this is a game that was winnable for the Tigers in a moment that you needed to win the game, and they did not. It's as simple as that. It's cut and dry. I like the fluffy stuff. I like the feel good. Yes, there are positives you can take away from it, but this is not the time of the year where you can take away positives. This is the time of the year where you have to win football games, and the Tigers did not. So they get a C+ from me as that rounds out our discussion on our grades so far. So Adam Busak, a B-, Davis Wilson, a B-, Amelia, an A-. I got myself here at a C+. Coming up next, little trip down to Starkville as the Tigers will take on Mississippi State. Again, as we continue to try to get a glimpse at where the Tigers will be at the end of this year. They will be playing in a bowl game. That's secured for sure as the Tigers try to hunt for that 10-2 season. We thank you again for listening to this episode of the Tiger Kickoff Show. One more time for our wonderful guests here in the Missourian beat reporters, Adam Busak, Davis Thumbs Up Wilson, and Amelia Hurley. This is Jacob Siciliano wishing you a good Monday night.